Oh. There is something about Marika's ascension that just doesn't make sense. And it's all because of this new piece of information about Marika and the two fingers that guided her. According to Count Ymir, Marika and the two fingers are said to be unhinged and broken. Even for Matter, the mother of fingers, who is said to be the cleaning daughter of the Greater Will, she too is said to be broken and abandoned. Indeed, the fingers are apparently abandoned by the Greater Will. And if Marika was under the guidance of the two fingers, then do you see the problem? How did Marika manage to ascend in the first place? Isn't it said that the fingers have been abandoned by the Greater Will because of their flaws? And you see, it is even said that Matter has been trying to contact the Greater Will ever since she was abandoned, and that she has since been waiting for another message to come, meaning there was never any. Even more perplexing is we know for a fact that the Greater Will did send the Elden Stars to the lands between, and Marika did become a god for the Greater Will and the Golden Order later. So how do we make sense of all these? What has caused the Greater Will not only to change his mind, but also respond to the long-abandoned fingers, and even more so, entertain them by ascending Marika, their chosen, despite the fact that she herself is also said to be unhinged? And wouldn't this conflict with the information that the Greater Will never responded to Matter? Or was it because the Greater Will only responded to Marika and the two fingers? So that doesn't really count? Well, no. And the answer to this conundrum would allow us to paint a picture so clear that we will reveal the secrets of Marika's ascension, the birth of the Erdtree, the reason behind its short-lived Age of Plenty, the secrets of the last Elden Ring, the purpose of the Elden Beast, the meaning of Fundamentalism of the Golden Order, the reason behind the removal of Destined Death, and finally, the birth of the Tarnished warriors. But no, Marika's ascension, the initial one we saw in the trailer, was not a legitimate one. While it was the goal once belonged to the Greater Will, it was not the goal of the Golden Order, at least not yet. And to paint you this picture, we must first step back a little and start with the most obvious question. What are the golden threads we saw Marika use in the trailer? And do we have more information now after the DLC? Well, we do. You see, to know what those golden threads are, we must first ask, what did Marika achieve with the golden thread? A question that is actually already answered by the trailer. An affair from which gold arose, and so too was shadow born. What Marika absolutely achieved with golden thread there is the creation of the Shadow Tree. I think many of us here, myself included, have wondered if the Shadow Tree is the Crucible, simply because we know the Hornsents worship the Crucible and the Shadow Tree is located in their realm. But this idea can be quite easily dispelled, because the Shadow Tree really is just a shadow of the Erdtree. Well, how can I be so sure? Because we know for a fact that the Erdtree itself, the one we have in Leyndell on Altus Plateau, was once the Crucible. As the description of Godskin Noble Road mentioned, not unlike the Crucible, the Erdtree in primordial form, or as the Crucible Tree armor mentioned, the armor holds the power of the Crucible of Life, the primordial form of the Erdtree. So the Shadow Tree really is just a shadow of the Erdtree. But now comes the real question. When was the Erdtree created then? Was it created at the time of the trailer as well? Indeed, it logically follows so. What Gold Arose refers to is exactly the birth of the Erdtree. But we know the Erdtree wasn't simply created out of thin air. It had a primordial form known as the Crucible. So what Marika really did there in the trailer, you see, was transforming the Crucible into the Erdtree, which in turn created the Shadow Tree veiling the Hornsens in their land in shadow. Marika literally took the crucible away from the Hornsens and transformed it into her own faith, sealed them away, and started a war against all factions in the lands between. Now, if this isn't enough to convince you, remember that the Erdtree was said to be once perfect and eternal, and you know what else is also eternal? The Dragon Lord Placidusax, the Elden Lord of the last Elden Ring, was also said to be eternal and beyond time. When asked what the Elden Ring is, Miyazaki-san explained in an interview that the Elden Ring is a mysterious concept that defines the world. While this sounds all rather abstract, we can at least infer from it that an Elden Ring is basically a set of concepts or laws that a world and its being are defined and operate by. Now, Placidusax was said to be the Elden Lord of the previous Elden Ring, an Elden Ring that looks rather different to that of ours. Therefore, it would be safe to assume that the previous Elden Ring would also have a set of concepts or laws that are more or less different to those of ours. And since Placidusax is a being of the previous Elden Ring, that would mean he had to also be defined by those concepts and laws as well. And because of that, we are able to identify at least one concept or law of the last Elden Ring, and that would be the allowing for eternal life. Placidusax was said to be able to dwell eternally beyond time, and in fact, it is not just him. All ancient dragons are said to have stony scale and are described as living rocks. And if these don't sound immortal enough for you, the description of the dragon halberd says that the dragonkin soldier never attain immortality. They are a pale imitation of their skyborn kin, which can only be referring to the ancient dragons who possess such immortality. Indeed, all ancient dragons are immortal. They are eternal and beyond time simply because one concept or law of the last Elden Ring defined it so. And it would also be this very concept that we defined the Crucible and transformed it into the Erdtree. Yes, what Marika did in the trailer was redefining and transforming the Crucible with the power of the last Elden Ring, or at least what remains of it. And yes, the golden threads Marika used were the remnant of the last Elden Ring, similar to the broken Great Rune of Miquella we found, but not as broken and powerful enough for the plan of Marika and the two fingers that guided her in all this. And this is why the Erdtree was said to be perfect and eternal once, because it really was, due to the very thing it was transformed with. Now, if this still couldn't convince you, then let's pretend we haven't heard any of this and take a little step back here. Remember that we discussed at the start of the video, it just doesn't add up the greater will would respond to the two fingers after abandoning them for so long, and even more so, entertain them by ascending a person they have chosen to be his god? Well, he really didn't. In fact, Marika's ascension in the trailer was not even legitimate. Do you remember Marika was also described to be unhinged as well by Ymir? While Ymir did elaborate later that the fault is on Matter, the mother of the fingers, for presumably giving birth to the unhinged fingers, it would still be them that were guiding Marika. And most importantly, what still doesn't change here is the lack of order in Marika's reign as a god. What do I mean by that? As we have discussed, the Shadow Tree was essentially created by Marika. And according to the remembrance of his avatar, the Shadow Tree was born of dark notions that bear no sense of order. That's right, of Marika's dark notions that bear no sense of order. And this would not be the only description that suggests so. The minor Erdtree incantation also mentions only the kindness of gold without order. Now, while this paints Marika instead in a more positive light, the point is that even when Marika's gold is kind, it still lacks order. So what does order even mean? Well, have you noticed order in both cases are spelled with a capital O, like the order in Golden Order? Correct. While Marika had an affair to which gold arose, It was in fact the gold from the previous cycle, the same gold that imbued the lightning of the ancient dragons and their breaths, the gold of the last Elden Ring, not the gold of the Golden Order. While gold indeed arose there at the time of the trailer, that was no Golden Order. But of course, that was until the Greater Will sends the Elden Stars to the Lands Between later, bearing a new Elden Ring and a beast that is literally said to be the living incarnation of the concept of order. The very thing Marika's goal badly needed, at least in the eyes of the Greater Will. Indeed, the Erdtree was once perfect and eternal in the beginning, as it was transformed under the power and concept of the last Elden Ring, by Marika's hand and under the guidance of the Two Fingers. And yes, Marika's ascension at first was not legitimate, as the Greater Will never responded to them there. But once the last Elden Ring, which also belongs to the Greater Will, is used by Marika to ascend without his approval, and on top of the fact that Marika and the fingers that guided her are unhinged and have no qualities of order, which I'll explain what they are in a bit, the Greater Will had to respond and send a new ring, as the last one is broken to threat, and also send the Elden Beast, who literally is the concept of order, to reign in Marika, who apparently lacks order. Simply put, what the Greater Will was doing was basically, I did not approve your ascension and order more using my last broken ring, but ascend you did, so you gotta do it right and do it my way. Now, it is important to stress that the Erdtree was indeed eternal for an age. Remember, it's called the Age of Plenty? Yes, it lasted for an age, at least, before the new Elden Ring arrived and redefined it, considering the Greater Will is so far away in the universe, and as the staff of the Great Beyond suggests, he is from beyond the microcosm, and it would likely take some light years of distance for him to send the Elden Stars to the Lands Between, or do any type of response at all. As for the Elden Beast, who is said to be the very concept of order, he is there to literally make up for Marika's lack of order, to make sure her reign would properly align with what the Golden Order stands for, which we will also explain in a bit. Therefore, the Elden Stars was not sent at the moment of the trailer to ascend Marika. It was sent after, to not only legitimize her, but to also rein her in, turning her from simply a god of gold to a god of the Golden Order, a puppet god of the Greater Will. So now comes the question, how is the concept of the new Elden Ring different to the last one, that when the Erdtree was redefined, it would no longer be eternal life but instead an object of faith? And while the Elden Beast was literally the concept of order, what exactly does order mean? Well, you see, the Greater Will did not send a new Elden Ring simply because the last one was broken. As I said, the new ring has concepts different to those of the last in how it defines the world and its beings. And with the eternal life of the Erdtree came to an end and slowly became more an object of faith, we can safely assume that the new Elden Ring doesn't have such a concept or law. In fact, the Fundamentalism described the Golden Order through one law that may just be entirely opposed to the idea of eternal life. And that law would be the law of regression. Yes, you guessed it. The rise of fundamentalism in the Golden Order is no accident. It described the Golden Order through the power of regression and causality, and these two powers are in fact the world-defining concept or laws of the new Elden Ring. None existed in the last. But what does regression and causality mean? According to the law of regression's incantation, regression is the pool of meaning, that all things yearn to eternally converge. Now, while this sounds very profound and philosophical, we don't have to overthink this. It is the regression to the cause of the first cause, the beginning of the universe. According to Ymir, the universe was created by the Greater Will through a great rupture, a Big Bang if you will. Yes, the Big Bang Theory.
I, too, am a glintstone sorcerer. We study the stars and examine the life therein. Are you familiar with our findings? Long ago, we began as stardust, born of a great rupture far across the skies. We too are children of the greater will. Is that not divine? Is that not sublime? And yet, none can fathom its implications. Its utter brilliance.
Now, if what Ymir said is true, the origin of everything did come from one big explosion by the hand of the greater will, then before the explosion happened, everything was indeed one great, just as Hyeta, or the Three Fingers, explained.
I have touched them. The words of the Three Fingers. As your maiden, allow me to divine them. All that there is came from the one great. Then came fractures, and births, and souls. But the greater will made a mistake. Torment, despair, affliction, every sin, every curse, every one born of the mistake. And so, what was borrowed must be returned, melted all away with the yellow chaos flame, until all is one again.
Now, I'm not trying to push some frenzy flame propaganda here. It's just that the origin of life told by Three Fingers is also surprisingly confirmed by Ymir in the DLC. And if this is true, all these words that describe the Golden Order, such as regression, causality, chain of relation, and all things yearn to eternally converge, is saying is that the Golden Order is fundamentally, get it, a return to the one great, a regression to the state before the rupture, the very first cause for all existence before the universe and life and souls are created. And if this is true, of course the Erdtree's Age of Plenty would end, when it was redefined again by the new Elden Ring, because the law that allows for eternal life has been replaced by the law of regression under the new Elden Ring. However, this would also become a problem for the Golden Order, or perhaps an oversight of the design of the new Elden Ring. Why, you ask? Because the gods of the Golden Order, including the demigods, need to be eternal and immortal to maintain their reign and sovereignty. But now we have learned that the new laws of the new Elden Ring doesn't allow for eternal life. So how should the Golden Order compensate? Well, simple. The removal of Destined Death.
Say you seek the power of the Rune of Death too? The Rune of Death goes by two names. The other is Destined Death. The forbidden shadow plucked from the Golden Order upon its creation.
Indeed, it was said that Destined Death was plucked from the Golden Order upon its creation, and it was plucked exactly to fix this problem, to make Marika, her demigod, and the Erdtree immortal under the new law of the new Elden Ring, so that the Golden Order can maintain its perpetual sovereignty. But that's also why the Erdtree became an object of faith instead. While it was again eternal with the removal of Destined Death, it was no longer life because of that. No more saps, no more tears. Under the last Elden Ring, eternal life did not have to be constant and immutable. But the eternal under the new ring, which was achieved through the removal of Destined Death, is different. As the incantation Immutable Shield would relate to the law of regression, it is the regression to become immutable, and eternal objects of constant and unchanged. So what caused the change in the two Elden Ring? Now, while both Elden Rings no doubt belongs to the Greater Will, what has made him change his mind from allowing eternal life to the law of regression? Well, maybe it's because the last Elden Ring was flawed. The fact that the god of Placidusax was able to flee as a vessel of the rain may exemplify just that. Or maybe it's as the Three Fingers said, the Greater Will did make a mistake by creating life and souls, and now he has realized it? What we can be sure, however, is that the last Elden Ring cycle is likely a failed one, due to the fleeing and absence of its god. It might have been abandoned together with the Fingers by the Greater Will. Indeed, considering it is said that Matter had received sign from the Greater Will before, and is also said to be the first shooting stars landed in the lands between, maybe Matter bore the last Elden Ring and started the last cycle, but was abandoned together with the cycle as it was a failure. The broken and unhinged nature of the fingers could also be another contributor. So maybe that was why it was the Elden Beast that was accompanying the new Elden Ring. A living incarnation of the concept of order, a supervisor, so to speak, to reign in Marika. But spoiler alert, that didn't stop her from shattering the Elden Ring. Indeed, I believe that Marika was set in a rather passive position once she was truly legitimized with the arrival of the new Elden Ring and the Elden Beast. It was also at that moment that she realized herself she has become a puppet for perpetuation. And that is why it was also at that moment of realization that she started planning for her own liberation. The stilling of Destined Death, the shattering of the Elden Ring, and the future return of the god-slaying Tarnished, who did kill the Elden Beast and finally liberated her as we know it. But that would be a topic for another day. But now we have mentioned the Tarnished, it's time to reveal another secret that will complete the picture. As the incantation protection of the Erdtree would describe, in the beginning, everything was in opposition to the Erdtree, but through countless victories in war, it became the embodiment of order. And it would be Godfrey, the first Elden Lord chosen by Marika in the beginning of the Erdtree, together with his warriors that fought through countless battles for Marika. But just as the Erdtree was no longer eternal when the new Elden Ring was here, Godfrey, the Lord of the Erdtree, and his warriors were instead stripped of the grace of gold and banished from the lands between to become tarnished. And why, you ask? Because all the wars they fought were during the Age of Plenty, where the Erdtree flourished with abundance for two purposes: attracting followers to Marika's banner and sustaining them till victory is achieved. Yet, their grace, the Erdtree's saps, embers, and blessing, everything Godfrey and his warriors had received to sustain them through Marika's war were all belonged to the Erdtree that was defined by the last Elden Ring. Indeed, the end of the Age of Plenty, as well as the birth of the Tarnished, were all because of the one same reason. They all had the gold of the last cycle. They were the remnant of the once eternal Erdtree, of the last Elden Ring. And just like the eternal Erdtree, they too had to make way for the new laws, for the new Golden Order. So now we have the big picture with plenty of turning points of the Erdtree history revealed. What does it all imply? From the perspective of the DLC, which is about Marika's backstory, it certainly makes you wonder if Marika had other agenda than just taking vengeance on the Hornsent. It becomes apparent after the DLC that Marika and her people, the shamans, were under brutal oppression by the Hornsent, and she was basically signing the devil's contract with the two fingers for vengeance, a seduction of gold. But what was the betrayal mentioned? And also, what was the cadaver or the object from which Marika retrieved the golden thread? Could that be related to the betrayal? While it is understandable that Marika would take away the crucible from the Hornsent as revenge, why did she have to establish a faith of her own and to start a war against all faction in the lands between? Was complete domination necessary for her vengeance? Or did she have other agendas similar to Mikola's, fighting for a better world, one that she had hoped she was born into? Well, I'm afraid it simply is part of the deal for Marika in exchange for vengeance against the Hornsent, to establish sovereignty of the Greater Will for the two fingers in the lands between. Yes, that's why Marika started a war for the two fingers in exchange for vengeance. From the perspective of the overarching narrative, it also becomes apparent that while Marika succeeded in her revenge, the price she paid was very costly. A perpetual puppet of the Greater Will and the Golden Order. But it also further established her motives and shed further light into the chain of events that she set in motion for her own liberation. Under this theory, the banishment of the Tarnished was not the will of Marika, but instead the greater will. But it's also apparent that Marika did make plan for their return, and this would also be a focus of my future videos as well. Also, I mentioned that the last Elden Ring cycle was most likely a failed one. But was the civilization of the Hornsens part of the cycle? Or was this something that developed on its own entirely after the cycle? And how about Mesmer? Where does his crusade ordered by Marika fit into all these? If you enjoyed this video, as well as my attempt at a detective-like presentation style, where I try to include reasoning process and relate everything to reveal a bigger picture, then please like and subscribe and click the bell button for more. Do let me know your thoughts, questions, and different opinions about the theories and revelations of the video in the comments below. Welcome to Occam's Onion, and thank you for watching. Stay tuned and I'll see you soon.